Welcome back to the session after the morning tea break. I hope that was quite nice and you had your second cup of coffee. In this session, we are going to be talking about mandating openBIM. I'm Vanessa, and I'm the moderator for this session. During this time, we're going to talk about the benefits of openBIM because many nations and organizations are leveraging openBIM to support and encourage digital adoption. So the benefits of openBIM are clear for us within this room, but we're going to listen to, the case study of the CORENET X initiative and better learn about Singapore's permitting and regulations plan. Now, our first speaker is Deputy Chief Executive Officer of Building and Construction Authority in charge of building control, Mr. Chin Chi Leong. He oversees the regulatory functions and building control policies relating to the entire life cycle of a building, from design, construction to maintenance. He's also the Commissioner of Buildings responsible for building maintenance and strata management functions, ensuring that existing buildings are properly managed and maintained. Together with the Urban Redevelopment Authority, Chi Leong leads the development of CORENET X, which is Singapore's one-stop integrated digital platform for building plan submissions and regulatory approvals. We're going to hear more from him about IFC-SG, which serves as the cornerstone of Singapore's digital transformation strategy, how it's platform agnostic, and how it enables interoperability of BIM models across various software platforms. Can I have Chi Leong up here, please? Warm round of applause for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. And welcome all to Singapore. I must start by saying that CORENET X is not just a BIM story. CORENET X is a story about regulatory transformation within BCA's or Singapore's regulatory landscape. But BIM is a key enabler for the success of CORENET. So if I may start by just saying that, and in BCA we do land with this slide always to say that actually we've been doing a lot of work in digitalization for the construction in the built environment. And we're looking at all pieces along the value chain. Integrated planning and design digitalization becomes one of our key cornerstones for our built environment transformation. A bit of background. This is as of 2024. We have about 1,800 registered architects in a very small, sunny Singapore. 2,633 professional engineers. And although we are a very small country, we have 20 approval stages or touch points, approvals, permits, across different regulatory agencies for a single property development project, right? The figures at the bottom just show the numbers of submissions in 2021. And I think they have gone up a little bit over the last few years. Some milestones of what we've been doing in BCA. We've been pushing, and my colleagues have been pushing BIM since 2010 and even earlier. 2015, we moved to virtual design construction. 2018, we were pushing IDD, and we introduced CORENET X, right? Actually, I wanted to say that we have an electronic submission system since 2020, mandated since 2020, right? 2000, sorry. We've been having an electronic submission system for 20 years, right? When it was introduced in 2000, it was the first in the world. Largely, it was a portal where industry submitted their information through the portal, and the portal will then bring the information back into the various regulatory agencies for approval. As what my senior minister of state said, none of it was integrated or coordinated, right? It was just the professional dealing with one agency to and fro, and the professionals would have to coordinate their submissions and approvals across agencies. So we started in 2020, first in the world then. It's been 20 years. We are a little bit slower than everybody else in terms of moving ahead with technology, but now we're trying to forge ahead with CORENET X. Our journey with BIM and 3D objects actually started with my colleague Taifat here in the 1990s. I think 95, 97, we started this journey. And in those days, I was sharing with buildingSMART colleagues that actually the word BIM hadn't even come out. It was called 3D or feature-based objects, right? That's how early we were. In the early days, we weren't successful, right? As successful, I would say. The effort was much more. Autodesk had just started Revit, and everybody was just adopting, slowly moving into BIM. We're making a second attempt now with CORENET X, and it's a major shift in what we're thinking and doing. Okay, integrated digital delivery, data-driven decision making. Actually, at the core of it is just data, right? And at the core of CORENET X, I'll explain later, is really the jewel actually is data and how we can harness data. All the streamlining efforts that we will see, the benefits actually are really the capturing of data, and to use data to drive how we think and how we will move on. Okay, I have a short video here to explain CORENET X before I go into the details, so if you bear with me, hope it works.
CORENET X is the next generation of CORENET.
The platform enables people to come together and work collaboratively and seamlessly together.
CORENET X actually represents an opportunity for our industry to transform the way we work.
CORENET X is conceived as the future ecosystem for regulatory approvals, leveraging BIM-enabled technology and automation. Today, a typical building project navigates through more than 20 key touchpoints in its regulatory approval journey. Different sets of plans are prepared and submitted concurrently to the regulatory agencies for separate approvals. CORENET X will optimize the use of human, automation, and technology to improve efficiency. A coordinated BIM submission will be made where regulatory agencies will review and provide a consolidated response.
It will allow collaboration on two fronts. First, collaboration among the people who submit it and among the people who review it.
In the new regulatory approval process, the 20 touchpoints will be transformed into 3 key gateways. All projects will have to make coordinated submissions through this gateway approval process. First, the design gateway reviews the broad planning parameters of the development, land use, building form, setbacks, height control, and connectivity are reviewed by the agencies to ensure critical parameters are safeguarded. Next, an optional piling gateway is available if the permanent foundation works are ready for approval, facilitating the commencement of piling works. Alternatively, this can be submitted as part of the second gateway, the construction gateway. Here, coordinated design details are reviewed such as the main structure, unit layouts, and other spatial provisions. Once cleared, construction and launch of sale may proceed. Along the journey, specific building details with no interagency dependencies can continue to be submitted to agencies to be cleared separately. The completion gateway is where site inspections and technical clearances with the respective agencies will be carried out. Similar to today's process, the overall temporary occupation permit and certificate of statutory completion will be issued once the development obtains all clearances.
By streamlining it into its various approval gates, so you have a systematic process and you can go from A to B in a straight line.
It gives people the chance to break beyond their silos, come together, work more collaboratively.
The new process will enable better coordination of the design upstream. This will help to reduce abortive works or reworks downstream during construction.
There will be a change from the current submission format to an openBIM e-submission format, IFC-SG. IFC-SG introduces a new way of representing data in a regulatory submission. Instead of relying on annotations, Data is embedded in the BIM model. There is no longer a need for industry to prepare different sets of plans for different agencies.
We'll be making IFC the default format for approved plans.
IFC actually is a common language that is based on the openBIM standard. It allows information to be captured in a consistent manner to facilitate the exchange of information.
Besides submitting in the IFC-SG format, the model will also need to be geo-referenced. Geo-referencing defines the geographical location of each BIM model by assigning real-world coordinates so that models from different disciplines can be brought together.
These federated models will help all the stakeholders to virtually review the project design.
We can achieve true coordination across the industry, since the models are in the accurate geographical location.
CORENET is about a total redesign of our current work process.
It's a way of actually transforming our industry towards digitalization, moving us to another level.
So that future processes for our building approvals can be smoother and faster.
Thanks to our partners who brought you this video. So the video explained the genesis and the thinking behind CORENET X. It's not new in a project where there's federated models, integrated disciplines, but we've never done it on this wide a scale, right? Across all our regulatory submissions. So the video explained the different touch points amongst the different agencies. There are 7 different agencies. We haven't brought additional service providers on board, those that provide power and cabling and all that. In the next stage, when we finish with the key agencies, we'll bring the service providers on board into CORENET X, right? So that makes it seamless. I think the key to all this is collaboration among project parties, which may or may not be happening now in the industry. Because in the current state of regulatory submissions, each discipline submits their own plans, right? And deals with the individual agencies on their own, right? The problem we had was that in practice, we found that some of the plans, the versioning of the plans that goes to different agencies were not even current, right? They don't match, right? You can imagine the coordination problems downstream. And within the industry, getting approvals from agencies and coordinating requirements from agencies became difficult. And that's why we decided that you give me one coordinated BIM model, federated models, right? And when it comes into the agency platform, the agencies will review and comment together. So it's collaboration on the project party side and collaboration on the agency side. So it's quite a major shift, right? And within government agencies, we will have to coordinate our responses and coordinate our, that we don't conflict in our requirements as well. Okay. Yeah, this is another example. I'll talk a little bit about openBIM format. When we did electronic submissions in year 2000, right? We also had to enforce some standards, right? Drawing standards, right? And I think Taifan and the team worked very hard on CP83, right? Naming conventions for our drawings so that we can standardize submissions in digital. Now, when we move to coordinated BIM, it's even more crucial that we adopt standards. We started this journey very early. CORENET X is about 6 years in the making, as I was saying, still making. We actually invited buildingSMART, Thomas Libich, to hold a workshop for us 6 years ago, right? I thank Thomas and the team for guiding us along. And this is another slide of openBIM and what we hope to achieve, okay? But talk a little bit about BIM. We were quite ambitious. We wanted to have coordinated models that we can check. We wanted to have automated checking, as what my Senior Minister of State, SMS Tang, had said, right? And that's a key. And I think everybody is trying to do that, right? But we wanted to do automated checking in an open format. So in CORENET, we will receive BIM neutral files, okay, openBIM, right? And we will provide the checking tools in BIM neutral format as well, right? But what it does mean, and we can talk a little bit about it during the panel, what it does mean is that the modeling required from the industry will have to be at a substantial level, right? We are mindful to when we bring the industry from a very low base to what we need, that it will take time. That's why we've been gradually pushing what we call IFC SG. It is just in IFC derivative, right? The base is still IFC, but with a lot more classification that we need for auto checking, right? Hopefully, it can be a standard that the whole world adopts, although maybe in different countries, your regulatory requirements will be very different, right? But we have landed on what we call IFC SG. It's still a work in progress, and it will continue to be a work in progress. We hope that anyone from buildingSMART or any of you can come in and participate and work with us on IFC SG as well, right? Localized adoption of IFC, and we work still very closely with buildingSMART, right? In fact, I just asked my colleagues, maybe we can invite buildingSMART to come here and give us an update on a workshop, right? And we are closely monitoring what are the other options out there as well. Okay, just to acknowledge our industry partners. Okay, just to explain a little bit about CORENET X, right? Project parties make their coordinated models. They come internally to what we call an agency collaboration platform. The agencies will have to collaborate to process the BIM models, right? The collaboration platform, I can share that it's on Fulcrum, right? Ratnakar is supporting us on this. He's going to be the next speaker. It will help, the collaboration platform will help to dissect some of the BIM models for agencies to view their different requirements, right? So there's a bit more than just a BIM viewer platform. Okay, it'll help the agencies to view, to comment, right, to return the information, right, to the project party so that they can work on the what we call the written directions and come back. Okay. Then we have an automated model checker. The model checker is an attempt for us to lighten the load for the industry. Compliance check against agencies' requirements are tedious. Okay, at the very low end of low-hanging fruit would be just geometric, parametric checks, right? Easy to do, but we're hoping to do more. Some of our agencies' rules are quite complicated, right? We hope to bring it to a level where it can be what we call deterministic, that we can then check, right, using the automated model checker, right? The platform, again, is Fulcrum, right? And I think Ratnakar has to do a lot more work on that, all right, to be able to help us do model checking, right? But we've got, I think we are aiming for a beta, what we call a minimum viable product of about 50 rules among different agencies as a start, and we will continue to build on these numbers, right? We hope to be able to do, what was our target, about 2,000 rule groups, okay, across many different agencies. Okay, there are, we've worked with various parties to build IFC SG data validators, right? Actually, the key to making sure that the BIM models are submitted well, first, you have to model well, right? And I said the modeling effort among industry is quite a lot, right? Let's be practical down here, right? The practitioners need time to do all this well. But how do we know that they've modeled well, right? The key is actually all your BIM quality checkers and things like that, and the validators. So this is quite important for the industry when you want to roll out something as major as this, right? Before we even get to checking on agency rules, government agency rules. Okay, this is my last slide. It's just a snippet of CORENET and the issues we have in the thinking. I think this is key for us. In whatever we do as a regulator, we can impose it via rules and things like that. But actually, the key job for us now, we did announce that CORENET X will be mandatory for projects of size 30,000 square meters and above come 1st October, right? But the key to it is, can the industry cope with the whole change in the way we do regulatory submissions? Can they cope with the modeling requirements, right? And how do we continue to innovate and move on, right? So the key to me is building up a community of practice, of practitioners, of people with real experience to give us feedback as regulators on what's practical, what's not, what can and cannot be done, so that government and industry partnership is actually key to the success of CORENET X, right? And I've been tasked with my team to bring, and this is our toughest challenge, to bring all those who operate in that space with the bigger projects, right, to be able to do submissions. I must say we've opened up voluntary submission for CORENET X since last year, end of last year. We've got about 40 projects that are already on board at various stages. So we are having real world experience. So even in the voluntary stages of the requirements, we've got people, like-minded people who are coming in to give us a try, you know. And we always tell the industry, nothing beats getting your hands wet, right? You learn, we learn with you. And the whole idea is that why are we doing this voluntary phase, the pilot phase? We want to be able to streamline our requirements to relieve the burden on industry. Because what we think is doable may not always be doable for different typologies of projects. So thank you very much. I'll end it there.
Thank you, Chi Leong. I think it's such a treat to hear from, you know, the person that is in charge of leading CORENET X. And, you know, I think it's a very interesting look into how we work in Singapore as well and within the government agencies. And now, Chi Leong talked about using Fulcrum in CORENET X, and I'm very happy to now introduce our next speaker, Ratnakar Garikipati, who is the CEO of Leap Thought. And under his leadership, Leap Thought has been pioneering solutions that simplify complex regulatory workflows and that accelerate the adoption of things like IFCSG and CORENET X. And we are going to now hear more on his insights on the revolution in the built environment and give us a glimpse of what he sees is the future of digital transformation within our industry. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ratnakar.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome to Singapore. Singapore, I very fondly call it to be my second home. I've lived in New Zealand for about 20 odd years. And then after that, I moved to US. And then, but in between, since 2017, I've been sort of loitering around in Singapore very fondly. About the same time as when I think the Singapore started to basically come up with this IDD kind of an initiative, which is an advancement from the virtual design construction. So, sorry, I need to get the clicker. So I'm going to basically take a different kind of an approach and share with you my perspective of what I feel where the industry needs to go from a digital point of view. So I'm backed by an incredibly talented team, you know, of our research head who's here. His name is Alan. Please feel free to talk to him. My vice chair, Jeffrey Avina, is here from the US. We've got a big team fielding here. And we also have a very good booth downstairs showcasing some of the great innovation our team is driving. But it's a great honor to actually sort of follow Leong because I've been involved with CORENET since its inception, while it was in its ideation state. But what I would do is I would talk about various things we are doing in Singapore, like the Land Transport Authority case study, the HDB Smart Design Platform, and so on, and CORENET. But then again, I'll put a futuristic kind of a lens on where we are basically leading, the innovation is going, and so on and so forth. So on that note, I'm Ratnakar. I'm the CEO, chairman, and founder of LeapThought. We operate with 3 headquarters. North America is US, Singapore is our Asia headquarters, New Zealand is our ANZ headquarters. So I'll just give you a bit of a background in terms of the type of work that we've been doing. I mean, there's a lot said about Singapore's kind of built environment and the various initiatives, various projects, and the focus of different agencies that's actually advancing the built environment here. Whether you're talking about the multimodal transport infrastructure, you know, led by LTA, including basically the new 2 rail lines that have been recently announced, in addition to the 8 that have been in operation. There's a vast kind of an amount of work that's going on in terms of highways and roads, including the North-South corridor. So our journey with LTA started in 2019, where we actually looked at the type of work that they do. And we said, hey, you know, you've got, let's say for the two rail lines that are being designed and built right now, the JRL and CRL, Jurong Region Line and the Cross Island Rail Line, there's cumulatively, I think, about close to 200 design build contracts. We've actually talked about this case study in the previous buildingSMART event in Valencia. We even actually had a panel discussion. So when you're trying to standardize, not just for LTA, but also for the industry in terms of how they should engage with LTA across 200 design build contracts, you know, making up of tunnels, train stations, rail network, bus depots, bus shelters, roads, you need to basically bet on standards. So I'll talk about the implementation of LTA, not in that level of detail, but actually in terms of what that sets up LTA to do in the future. So that's a brief introduction about the LTA and the platform that we provide that powers basically the rail and the road and some of the ANA contracts that we're discussing with LTA about. Then the CORENET, I mean, as Leong mentioned, as the senior minister mentioned earlier, our journey began basically with CORENET very early on. What we do right now is we power the collaboration platform that enables the 8 regulatory agencies to be able to receive the submissions in BIM and process it, you know, while being in lockstep with each other. And if you look at the market was not ready for that kind of innovation. To allow not just one organization and its divisions, but you're talking 8 organizations and their respective divisions to be able to collaborate seamlessly and be in lockstep. Because at the end of the day, your engineers and your architects need to be able to get one coordinated response, not multiple conflicting coordinated responses. So that's while the BIM itself is actually a stretch, trying to basically, you know, standardize and drive an industry level kind of transformation is another stretch on top. So and underpinning that with the model checker, again, basically, rightfully so, BCA placed their bets on open standards. It wouldn't have been possible if they actually had to work with various proprietary formats that are familiar to many engineers and architects. Let's look at Auckland Transport. Auckland Transport basically was amalgamated. I mean, it was 7 different councils had to come together to form the Greater Auckland Transport Agency. So all the transport functions were consolidated from 7 legacy different organizations. When they came together, the ministers just announced about $30 billion worth of capital plan and infrastructure investment. They didn't actually have, they were dealing with spreadsheets that they inherited, access databases. They inherited basically a whole bunch of systems that wouldn't talk to each other. We actually, in 2013, we talked to them about open standards and put them on open standards. Right now, their entire portfolio of capital infrastructure program runs on Fulcrum and on open standards. Talk about Singapore's JTC, Jurong Town Corporation. I would actually strongly encourage you guys to jump on the internet and look for this organization, because what they do is they drive economic development of Singapore. They basically attract semiconductor businesses, the manufacturers, then the industries like the Bosches, the Dysons, and so on and so forth, to come and set up shop here in Singapore. And to accommodate them, they actually design and build smart estates. These smart estates are the future cities, right? So they even actually make provisions for autonomous vehicles and so on and so forth for basically the futuristic kind of designs and so on and so forth. So Fulcrum, again, is powering entire kind of greenfield development, design and development of JTC across their entire portfolio. Again, I'm not going to go into the detail. I'm just giving you basically the references of, you know, the enterprise level kind of uplift you can drive by embracing open standards and the benefits of it. HDB, I mean, you probably have seen, for those who've come to Singapore, you know, the volume of construction that goes on in terms of the public housing. I mean, the entire world's actually grappling with this problem of solving the housing issue. While Singapore actually, you know, in my view, inspires me the way they actually do the housing. They actually, I think, are mandated to release about 30,000 to 50,000 flats every year. That's not insignificant. That's a huge volume of build that they need to do, design and build that they need to do by engaging basically the ecosystem. For them, you know, acceleration is very important. Speed to market is important. Being able to meet those deadlines and mandates is very important. What that means is they need to be able to accelerate the way they design. Automation comes into play. And to power that kind of automation, you need open standards. So what does that mean? I talked about the integrated digital delivery that the Singapore coined. This was back in 2018. When I talk about integrated digital delivery, when our team looked at it, they said across the life cycle of a given project, you do simulations, you do basically, you know, computations, you integrate with a supply chain that's vertical in nature into a horizontal project life cycle to drive basically the automation, right, from a design for manufacturer and so on and so forth in assembly. Now, and then you actually talk about the efficiencies that you need to achieve in terms of where you actually design the construct, and then hand over for commissioning and operations. But we all talk about basically model checking. In my view, model checking, yes, it's actually a small kind of a part of what you could do with BIM models. You're not only just basically validating the BIM models, but what across the life cycle, the way I see it is from the time that you acquire the data, your survey data that informs your BIM models for your planning and your design, your preliminary designs and so on, to enriching those BIM models with validations, simulations, and all kinds of information to basically, you know, performing compliance checks, quality checks, and so on, as well as actually enabling BIM-based asset registrations and so on for commissioning and operations, in turn mean we're not just actually talking about just model checking the BIM models. There's a lot more to it. I think the minister talks about earlier about the importance of continuity of BIM models. So when you go from design to construct, and in between, when you actually push those BIM models into regulatory systems for submissions, for approvals, and so on and so forth, you need to make sure that the same BIM model goes out for regulatory submission and comes back in again, and then is carried out for its next stage in the life cycle of the project. So the integrity of the data that's in the BIM model needs to be retained through the life cycle. This is not often understood. When you look at the whole thing from a tool point of view or a system point of view, you need to look at it holistically. Now, which is where internally, we've stopped talking about model checking. It's not about model checking. It's about holistic model intelligence. What I mean by holistic is it's the life cycle intelligence across all stages. That's very important. Model checking is part of it, and it's basically intrinsic to it. So it's about how we then basically take that and enable that life cycle. Here's an example of the generative AI that we've just launched on the 13th of March. I've got a few videos here. Here's a submission. I received a document. Could be a method statement, could be anything. So the AI is basically integrated into the product where it actually talks about, summarizes the document for you. So I think in this case, it's listing all the bus shelters that are actually within the document, right? Now, let's step into basically the more advanced kind of use cases of what generative like AI can do from a BIM point of view, especially when you're actually having to comprehend something very complex, which is 3D in nature. In minutes to be able to design, review, or, and so on and so forth. So here's a model, here's a train station. You have all these models that are federated, right? You have a structural model, a MEP model in the viewer here. On the right side, I'm actually saying, hey, turn off basically structural and show me just electrical or mechanical. To be able to do that, it has to go back to what I talked about. It's being able to index every fragment of the piece of information that actually both geometrical and attributes in nature in the BIM models and how you store it, right? So here's an example of, let's say I have a submission. I receive a whole bunch of comments from BCA, right? I need to basically resubmit, right, with changes. Now, this is how basically the AI is returning the compare in my viewer. So it's basically saying, hey, this is what you gave me before. This is what you're giving me now, and this is the difference. So it's even saying, hey, pick the versions that you want to compare. You click, and then those are the results. So it put the model in X-ray mode. I said, hey, turn off X-ray so I could see. On the bottom here, it's actually tabulated what's been added, what's removed, what's been modified. It's a change log. Now, it's not about the BIM. It's about what's inside the BIM. It's the data within the BIM. It's about actually having access to the change log. It's about being, infusing it with additional information and analysis. I'll give you an example of HTB, right? Just basically for their residential towers recently, when you submit the models, the system basically generates like the buildability score and the envelope. That's not model checking. That's infusing, back into the submission additional intelligence that would actually be useful for people that are actually doing design reviews. It's not just about model checking. So on that note, I would actually leave a thought with you all. When you talk about BIM model, when you talk about open standards, it's not just about, the benefit is not just model checking. I think because the understanding needs to be a bit broader in terms of the benefits. So I leave you with a thought called Holistic Model Intelligence Engine. I would strongly ask you to come to our booth. All the case studies that I talked about, including how we index the data. I mean, this here is a pictorial representation of how we take every finest fragment, minute information, both geometrical and attribute, and we index everything. We vectorize all the data because the users need to be able to get sub-millisecond response times. People have been talking about NVIDIA, workloads now, but we've been doing that 5-6 years ago. So it's just a thought. Please feel free to engage any of our team. And I really appreciate Singapore basically pioneering the transformation for built environment using the open standards in a way that it's not been seen until now. So thank you.
Thank you, Ratnakar. Loitering fondly in Singapore is what you do, and I hope every one of us here also gets to loiter fondly in Singapore. I mean, there are a lot of nice places to go, and I hope you find, within the next 3 days, good places that you can go to see more of Singapore. Check out the Housing Development Board flats, the HDB flats, where most Singaporeans live in. They are very affordable, well-built housing estates, and they are, basically sort of like a Singaporean icon. Right, so if you're going around, drop by to have a look at some of them. And now we are going to have a panel discussion. We're going to have the two speakers that we had before come up, and we will also be joined by Eric Bugeja, who is the chair of buildingSMART Australasia. He's also at CIMIC, which is a large contractor that does large infrastructure projects like roads, rails, bridges. And Eric is in charge of digital integration across the company. We'll hear more from him. We'll also hear from Anna Rydzy, who is the chairperson of buildingSMART Poland, as well as Yoshinobu Adachi, who is the director of buildingSMART Japan. Yoshi is in charge of BIM implementation, also in Kajima. And we will also have Stefan Reiser, who is at SBB Swiss Federal Railways. Stefan is in charge of BIM standardization and industry activities. And now it looks like we've got most of the chairs ready. Can we have all of our speakers come up? Leong, Ratnakar, Eric, Anna, Yoshi, and Stefan, and a warm round of applause to welcome them on stage. Now the panel has a big responsibility, and it is that they're going to ask questions on your behalf. But of course, if you have a burning question to ask, you can always just raise your hand and we can take it. All right. I will go from my side and I'll read through the names once again. They are Ratnakar, Leong, Anna, Yoshi, Eric, and Stefan. All right. Thank you for joining us on the stage. And I think, in this session, we're talking about mandating openBIM. Now, can I hear from some of your thoughts, what you think about the presentations earlier? We've heard from the regulatory side, which is the vision that they had for CORENET X. And we've also heard from the implementation side, which is, from Ratnakar's perspective of how he's provided the tools to execute that vision. Now, would you like to start the ball rolling by sharing some of your thoughts about what's been presented so far? Eric's looking at me, so Eric can start first.
Looks like I've got the microphone. Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. That was quite impressive, actually. So it's great to see how far Singapore's come. I haven't been here for a few years, but very impressive of the way it's been adopted, the way government is pushing. It's great to hear a minister actually talk about BIM in the right way, and a good understanding of BIM as structured information management and managing information correctly. So from my perspective, I think that's quite impressive in terms of what's been done. I don't know if others got thoughts on that before we talk about minutes. Stefan?
Yeah, just would like to second that. I think it's very impressive how you've done that, and I would second also the words that have been said in the last presentation. It is about a holistic approach to looking at data and how that went through. Then again, I think we share the same vision on a global scale, that we need to have approval of models during the whole life cycle of information. It gets a bit more spicy when it goes into details.
Okay, the CORENET and CORENET X has a very long histories, and as a Japan chapter's perspective, we have very similar ideas from government side. So we have been watching the CORENET X as kind of benchmarking practices. So I'd like to share our chapter's experience after the Anna's comment.
Okay, so firstly, I have to say that I'm jealous because you have support from your government, from public institution. We in Poland, we have to fight for it, but we do it. I will observe, I will follow the discussion, but I have some thoughts about the mandate in general. Our government already is in consultancy with another example, for example, with Finland. So I think that learning from good examples is really something valuable.
Now, I think Yoshi wanted to share some thoughts about openBIM mandates and what you're doing in Japan as well. Shall we kickstart that?
Okay, it's in this context, mandating openBIM. In Japan, we have a very BCA-like agency. It's MLIT, Ministry of Land Infrastructure, Transport, Tourism. So we call MLITs. And MLIT will start its openBIM-based building code check initiatives. There are 2 steps. And the first step will be coming to 2026 spring. In the first step, requirements is submitting it's a BIM-based drawing. That means, as it were, well-aligned design documents generated from BIM software, and also I have to submit is the combination. But the first step, it's kind of always a step-by-step strategy approach is built in the MLIT's policies, because we have a lot of its architects and it's a huge industry. So, and the first step is the mainly drawings are reviewed, but they are also planning to go forward with IFC data review in 2029. So this is very similar to CORENET X. So I believe that there are a couple of MLIT officers here, and they are watching your presentations very carefully. So that is the basic information of what happens in Japan.
Now, earlier in a conversation with Yoshi, he was talking about, how it's so interesting that we are able to get various government agencies to come together. And, like Anna's comment, she says, I'm jealous, of what you have in Singapore. I mean, within the buildingSMART community, I hear that quite loud. Oh, stop. But, I think perhaps we can hear from Leong on, what are the, how easy is it, is it as like effortless as it's meant, as we can see now on the stage?
It's not easy. Okay. When we started CORENET, if you ask me in hindsight, we went in a big bang. Everything quite big, and we wanted to change many parts. We talked about collaboration among project parties, and I said this was already happening, but in pockets. In government, we have been actually BCA has we have an interagency coordinating committee where we were very focused on 2 things. One was it was clearinghouse where there were conflicts among agencies and project parties. Projects couldn't get their approvals through the door, right? And we will stand up the committee to resolve conflicts among agencies, right? BCA doesn't have veto power, so we do a very facilitatory committee to solve problems, basically, right? And this is very downstream at the very difficult stage where projects are trying to get their approvals, right? On the other hand, we were also trying to get agencies to harmonize rules, and that's the key, right? If you think about 7 agencies having different requirements that may have conflicting requirements, all right, you can't build to suit one agency and meet other agencies' requirements. How do we solve some of these problems? So this committee had been going on for a while, right? So you need to seed all this in place before you even start the big process of thinking about hey, getting CORENET X ready, right? So for us, CORENET X, the key was whether we could get every agency to work together. Fortunately, I share with some of you all that, well, we don't have multiple layers of government. We don't have the federal government, the state government, the county governments, and the municipal governments, right? So for us, it's one level, and that makes it easier for coordination, right, and for agreement. And in Singapore, well, this is the tenet of the Singapore government and the public service, that we believe in a very whole of government approach. Mind you, we are still working every day at this. I shared with you that we do a lot of pilot projects, right? We've got 40 ongoing, 40 plus ongoing. But in the pilot projects, we will hear genuine feedback that certain requirements are too much front-loaded, that the project parties, the consultants, can't meet. And then we will navigate with the agencies to see how we can shift the regulatory requirements to be able to better manage this process and help the industry navigate the whole of CORENET X. So whatever you do, all I want to say is that this is an ongoing process. I have a very small team of about 20 odd people plus another 20 from my IT side of the house, right? Managing this project. And but you need that constant attention to this level of detail. We're hand-holding our pilot projects across the approval gates, really virtually hand-holding and learning from them. If you want to introduce something like that, you cannot just mandate and hope that it will work. I think that's key. Yeah, thanks, Vanessa.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually the journey, as Leong put it. Being, one has to be really flexible in every step of the way, and basically be there in the trenches to make sure that basically, we keep learning and evolving and improving. Yeah, so I mean, I think I wouldn't be able to express the way he did. Yeah, so yeah, I appreciate that.
I think one of the interesting things that Leong raised was that we don't have that many layers in government to go through. And that was so interesting. I immediately pulled out my notes from what I spoke to with Stefan about. And, the figures that he gave me, which is that, the Swiss construction industry is highly segmented. There is a federal government with 26 cantons, 2,131 municipalities, which, and all of them are trying to enact their own regulations. And although Switzerland doesn't have a mandate per se, right? But SBB itself has it. And they are implementing openBIM on their projects, even though there is no mandate to do so. Stefan, can you tell us a little bit more about this, opposing view where you have so many different parties coming together?
Yes, and thank you for citing these figures because I couldn't keep them in mind. But I think it's comparable. I mean, from population-wise, Switzerland and Singapore are really close together. So the complexity factor of having 2,131 municipalities might just be, it's not undoable, but it's just more complex. Having said that, we as a federal organization with infrastructure through all out Switzerland, on the federal public procurement law, have no other choice than to use openBIM standards. And I think that's a good thing. And we should see two perspectives in this. So from a client's perspective, we are not the only railway undertaking in Switzerland. There are 169 transportation companies in Switzerland and 18 railway undertakings. And just for the industry, that we as railway undertakings all have the same language, that we communicate with them, is a huge advantage to the market. Then on the other hand, for us, it's easier to scale that company-wide because we have different languages. We have 4 spoken languages, a lot of English as well. And just to scale our projects that we have every year, we need to rely on openBIM standards for that. And then from the industry's perspective also, I think one key aspect of using openBIM standards is that that the industry is not locked into certain software vendors. And that's also one main challenge, and that I want to use Jan's word from this morning. We have to be honest about it, and I think the real, let's say, acceleration of openBIM adoption in the Swiss market is when openBIM standards are completely software adopted. And you solve that problem yourselves in Singapore, which is a good thing, but we have to find all the different ways to do that.
I would say we have a very similar problem to Stefan, but not as complicated as you. So we have multi-layers of government in Australia, and they're not all politically aligned as well. So there's a lot of battles that go from federal to state to local to all the agencies. We don't have a mandate, and a lot of people don't like the word mandate. People don't like being forced in Australia to be told what to do. The analogy I'd sort of like to use, if anybody's got kids and you want them to do chores, you could force them to do chores, they won't like doing it, or you can provide incentives for them to do chores and they're more likely to do it, you know. And it's a similar thing here. I think the way we've approached it in Australia, and I think buildingSMART's played a role as an independent agency to bring together all these different layers of government and show them the value of openBIM. And I think when you show people the value, you don't need to force them to do it as much. So you really show government the value in open standards and openBIM. A lot of stuff what Stefan spoke about, we used to have a situation in Australia, particularly in the transport sector, different states would use different software vendors to deliver their designs. So Queensland would have one vendor do all the designs. In New South Wales, they expect all their consultants to use another software package. That causes a problem where we've got a massive shortage of engineers in Australia. So the way to solve that is say, we don't really care what software package you use. We want you to deliver your information in the same way, in a structured way. The way we focused it was on probably the biggest transport agency, Transport for New South Wales in New South Wales. They were doing the biggest projects. We worked with them. They developed their own very structured schema. So they went away from the one line in a contract saying hand over IFC to hand over IFC in a really structured way. The next step for them is then training the supply chain on how to deliver that. That's one of the biggest challenges as well. So working with universities, and there's people in this room who've been working with universities to develop education programs, and Transport for New South Wales are actually teaching the supply chain how to hand over structured information. The other states are now copying that and you know, we want them to copy that because we want to try and standardize. So getting away from the word mandate to standardization and requirements. Once it's a requirement, once it's a standard, it's basically a mandate without using the word mandate. So that's the Australian perspective, which can be quite, you know, complex, similar
like
to
a
what
positive reinforcement.
It's positive reinforcement rather than the whip versus the carrot sort of mentality.
If I can add to something, am I audible? Okay. So yeah, I mean, my perspective is one thing, the mandate, but the mandate is not from a regulatory point of view, not just from a regulatory point of view. That mandate needs to come from basically the asset owners and operators and developers to basically push the industry down the openBIM. Because at the end of the day, you know, if everybody speaks a common language, the rate of transformation is going to be that much higher and faster. The problem, I mean, as we were coming into Singapore, what really inspired me personally was the integrated digital delivery kind of framework coined by Singapore, which actually talked about progressive firms, progressive and collaborative firms, you know, which talked about design for manufacturing and assembly, which talked about, you know, a whole bunch of things. That mean, you know, you need to make sure that end to end, you're not just actually coordinating, you're also sort of using the framework to be able to mine the information to drive better decisions down the lane for various reasons. through the life of an asset. That was truly kind of remarkable because entire world was talking about VDC. VDC is a practice, it's a process. But the output of the data from VDC needs to come into like some kind of a sophisticated data platform where you can then do a lot of things with it. The integrated digital delivery, when we started to understand, it really actually captured our imagination. We doubled down on investing in it to give it wings. It was a concept. There was no product out there in the market. In fact, actually, when we did the first case study for JTC in 2017, I very much remember the then JTC CEO actually invited the board of JTC, the Temasek board. He then invited ministers, the agency CEOs. They were all brought in on buses as excursions to actually see the IDD in action. You know, my take is the industry and the built environment, the software, the tech folks are still looking at tools. They're looking at a tool to solve a specific problem for an engineer or an architect or a particular person. What we need is a more holistic kind of view, more holistic solutions that will carry forward the data and bring back and allow for all kinds of, you know, intelligence to be infused into it. It's just my 2 cents.
Can I just add a take on the earlier point about mandating? I must say, and I repeat this again, CORENET is not about just a BIM story. It's not just about openBIM. You know, as Ratnakar is saying, all the lead government agencies were already starting to do to have common data environments, right? Starting on their integrated digital delivery journey, right? All government procurement entities. The JTC looking after industrial projects, the LTA looking after transport projects, and the HDB looking after housing projects. So many of these key government agencies were looking at already the IDD journey, and key developers, right? Key building owners were also looking at IDD journey. So CORENET came in the midst of all this, and CORENET was about a change in the way the regulatory agencies will regulate the industry, right? And that's why I mentioned about the process changes, the 20 different touch points down into 3 different gateways. So that was the key. And to do this, you need to have standardization. And it was very obvious for us then we would need to adopt an openBIM format, right? So we started that journey with that thinking. So as I said, openBIM is a key enabler for the success of CORENET. And we probably couldn't have thought about doing it any other way. And I said before, when we first mandated electronic submissions in 2000, we also had standards, right? I mean, 2D drawing conventions and things like that. There needed to be discipline. If not, how would plans and now models coming to agencies be viewed, right? It would be all over the shop. It would be too difficult for our agency processing officers to even view the plans and do work. So that's really where it comes from.
And I think it's really interesting that you brought up discipline, you know, and standardization, because standardization means that if you're not part of this standard, you have to adapt and change, right? And I think, you know, when we talk about mandates, that is also the challenge, right? Like with Anna's been talking to her government, right, in Poland about, you know, getting more people, more companies to adopt openBIM. But, you know, her view is that it should be a balanced approach, right? Anna, can you tell us more about your views?
Yeah, of course. I remember in 2022, a meeting at one of the technology universities in Poland. And there was, on the public, there was really great representation of BIM-related people. And we did the survey when openBIM should be implemented as mandate in Poland. So the public was split quite in 4 parts. Immediately, in 2-3 years, in 20 years, and of course never. So the situation has changed. Now we have a great interest from the market, and from the market, it's and this interest and this necessity is coming. So we have to influence a little bit our government. But before mandate, I try to repeat that every time: education. So resistance is because of the lack of the education, and that's our mission. This is something I consider as my and our buildingSMART Poland mission, to educate the market, to educate young people. I just 3 or 4 years ago, 4 days ago, I've been attending as a speaker a conference for really young people, and I can tell you that openBIM was in the 17% of presentations. So I'm impressed, and that's hope for me. But no mandate, no immediate mandate. I think that it should be broken into milestones, well thought out, and accompanied by the education of the market.
And I guess we are still always going to have a segment, perhaps smaller, even in milestones, that is going to say never, right? I think one of the challenges in regards to, changing the way we are doing things, having that discipline, to standardize data, also comes with challenges, because there are, things like additional costs, perhaps, additional manpower, new things that people have to learn in order to adapt to this. What are your thoughts on, how we can address the view that, hey, whatever you're proposing, it costs money?
Maybe one thing, the new things that people have to learn in this industry are fun in the end. It's not, working with BIM is something that really is helping people to develop their visions and to bring ideas in action, which I think is a very, very good thing. So I think the basic motivation is here from the industry. But then again, that it costs money. Sometimes I guess the good thing is to have that in steps. And that's what Anna said as well. The basic is education. That is always something. We educate ourselves, we educate others. But then the implementation of BIM has to follow a certain logic, in which can be different nationally. And it has to be cut into pieces so that it is arguable, and that you always have ways to change if you are at a certain point. And I think that's what would helps to argument how it costs money. And that's also how standardization, we now have had the discussion about standardization or a mandate. That's also how standardization used to work over the last decades. Standardization is something that is usually after having the market developing best practices, then it turned it into standards, then it turned it into regulations. And if you do that approach, and that is an approach that our national chapter, for example, does very well with helping with best practices, then it's easier to argument that it costs money, because in the end I'm sure we will have efficiency benefits, point one, and we sometimes already do. And then there is another aspect. Maybe I'm just going too far. You just stop me there. We have seen that this morning, if 40%, I think the number was 41%, that there is a statistic in Switzerland which says 30% of the industry will be in retirement by 2030. There is no other way around than being more efficient. And it's not about how much money can we save, but how much work can we do in the future with BIM.
Yes, it costs money, but I think we're all aware of the amount of overruns we have on construction projects, the amount of errors we have on construction projects, and a lot of that's not always visible as well. Nobody likes to admit that mistakes are made, but we know the construction industry is not efficient. Like, you go to presentations for the last 20 years that showed a lack of productivity in construction. So yes, we need to invest money. So we're not spending money, we're investing money. We're investing money early in projects to get those projects right. And we all know the statistics that that's going to have a massive impact at the back end of projects, to the point where some of the presentations this morning shows we could build an extra metro or two for the cost. So this whole argument that it costs money, that's not a cost, it's an investment, and it's preparation for the future. And the ones that don't advance will just get left behind, whether that's from a country perspective, individual perspective, or company perspective. So that's the reality. It's hard to believe that we're here, 30 or 40 years after the whole BIM journey started, and we're still having that argument about, is it worth it? I think that argument's gone now. I think there's enough projects around the world that demonstrate the value in this way of working.
If I interpret your questions to where I would say openBIM demands is coming from, in Japan case, where Japan is facing just a couple of big challenges, like declining birth rate, and in the opposite side, the aging population is going up. So, but still we need to secure a skilled workforce in every industry, especially construction industry. And we have the natural disasters like earthquake, tsunami, and so we need to make it much more resilient societies. And on top of that, we are having new value creation demands from owners, more green CO2 emissions. And the owners are demanding it's a smart building, smart cities for their productivities and much more safety, well-being, special workplace or something. I think this kind of demands and circumstance is expecting more innovative and digital way of workflow in our industry. So that kind of things are needs to openBIM, because openBIM is kind of connecting glue with different heterogeneous industry. So that's my feeling that.
All right, we've come to 12:30 and it's almost time, to break for lunch now. So I hope you would give me a round of applause for, our panelists over here, Stefan, Eric, Yoshi, Anna, Leong, and Ratnakar. Thank you very much for giving your thoughts to this discussion. And I think, what we can see here is that mandates, are I guess a double-edged sword. They can move things forward, but also, if you move too fast, you can trip as well. But ultimately, as I have discussed, with all of you and gotten your thoughts, it is that the role of education is so important when it comes to openBIM adoption. And I think you would hear more about that on day 3 of the summit at the buildingSMART Singapore conference, when we will hear more about the CORENET X implementation. You will also hear a lot more, about the projects that Ratnakar talked about, because we will be hearing from the Land Transport Authority and the JTC Corporation as well, and many other updates and interesting projects coming from Singapore about how we come together, to get things done, to implement digital delivery on our projects together, making our built environment a much more productive place for everyone. All right, so we're going to close this panel now. Thank you very much for being here together with us, and thank you for being such a wonderful audience. Thank you.